About. Joining me now are Jonathan Martin, the politics bureau chief at Politico, and Mark Leibovich, staff writer at The Atlantic and author of the book Thank You for Your Servitude, about the Republican Party bowing down before Donald Trump. How prescient indeed. Mark Leibovich, let me start with you. First, your reaction to the 21 minutes of technical glitches that the audience was treated to as part of the DeSantis launch.
I thought it was a great and unifying evening for America. I mean, I think, first of all, it's very rare that I don't want to be too gleeful. Oh, what the heck? I'll be a little gleeful here. You see Donald Trump, Fox News, so many Democrats. I'm guessing so many people who know Ron DeSantis and suspected that maybe he wasn't ready for prime time are enjoying some Schadenfreude over this, because this is as singular a disaster as I can remember in a presidential launch in a long time. But you did say, look, there was no Trump onesie was seen anywhere. We didn't see what he was wearing, and it does seem like this was a big gift to Donald Trump, and it seems also that he knows exactly what to do with it. So, look, this is a rough start for Ron DeSantis. I'm not sure Elon Musk and his charisma is going to sort of help him get out of this, but obviously there have been better ways to begin a presidential campaign that was supposedly going to challenge the incumbent or the de facto incumbent.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's an understatement. There are definitely better ways to launch, Jonathan, but, there's obviously the technical glitches, and then there was the decision to do it on Twitter to begin with, right? The preoccupation of this campaign with kind of the elites that are, business elites, Silicon Valley elites who feel somehow left out in the cold by the woke mind virus. I mean,
right.
I just thought the choice to begin with was a bad one or a questionable one. And then the execution obviously had problems. Your thoughts?
Look, I think these announcements are typically done with two things in mind: getting good coverage in the press and raising a lot of money, both online and also via traditional big dollar fundraising asks. And obviously, the first part is going to be a debacle. He's going to get terrible coverage. I'm curious to see how this shapes the fundraising as well. But there's a third thing that I'm really curious about, Alex, and that is, DeSantis has kept the press at arm's length in Florida, and up until his launch today has tried to do so similarly as he sort of eyes the national stage. Is this the kind of thing that's going to make him realize, I can't go around the media, I'm going to have to engage at some level? Or does the sure to be awful coverage that we're going to see here in the next day just alienate him further from the mainstream press and sort of drive him further away? I think this will be a good test in that sense of this candidate.
Yeah, well, there's so many tests that Ron DeSantis has to pass. And I guess that, one of the things that was reported at the New York Times, Mark, was the army that pro-DeSantis super PACs are assembling to basically get out support, get out the vote for Ron DeSantis in early primary states. And they're planning on spending $200 million to beat Donald Trump. And they are trying to build a political apparatus with 2,600 field organizers by the fall, which is double the peak of Bernie Sanders' entire 2020 primary campaign staff. Sanders had a formidable ground operation. And my question is, who are the 2,600 people who are going to be door knocking multiple times on the same door for Ron DeSantis? Do you sense a groundswell of grassroots enthusiasm for Ron DeSantis, Mark?
No, I don't. And certainly tonight's not going to help. But I do think that clearly, there is a hunger, there is an appetite in the Republican Party for some alternative to Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis had this sort of positioning for the last few months that, he was looked to as someone who could be that person that people could rally around. Now he has to do something that he's extremely unproven on, which is go out in public. But look, the fact is, though, he's dealing, and I think this decision goes to a very, very small universe that he is appealing to, which is the base, which is people who get involved in caucuses and organizing in primary states. And look, he could go really heavy at the evangelicals in Iowa over his pretty, aggressive abortion stance. He could do the same in South Carolina and some of the early states. So, there is actually a calculation here, but at some point you have to excite some people.
Yeah, well, can we talk a little bit about the strategy, Jonathan, just in terms of how the DeSantis team thinks it's going to be a viable alternative to Trump in the model of a fighter without saying anything bad about Trump or actually fighting him?
Yeah, I've actually asked his folks about this question, and look, I think their view in DeSantis' world is he's got to define himself, introduce himself, get some of the bio out there. The fact that he served in the Navy, for example, is not that well known, even with GOP primary voters. So I think they want to get the bio out there for the first couple of months before they engage Trump. I get the strategy, but you're not dealing with a conventional candidate in Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is going to drag you into engaging with him. And if you don't, then you're going to get, pounded repeatedly and not respond. And so I think DeSantis pretty quickly is going to have to decide now that he's a candidate, do you keep that plan of just do bio, talk about me, and avoid engaging Trump, or do you have to call an audible on the fly here and hit back? Because Lord knows Donald Trump is going to be swinging and swinging fiercely.
Well, yeah. I mean, Mark, in the time that those 20 minutes of technical glitches were, we were treated to that, the Trump campaign literally cut an ad juxtaposing Trump's campaign launch with the Ron DeSantis campaign launch. They are going to be vicious. And the way, it's the DeSantis people seem so intent on not saying anything bad about Donald Trump. The opposite is not true. I mean, from the jump, Trump is trying to position DeSantis as arrogant and ungrateful for all the things, and I put in quotes, that Trump has done for DeSantis. And you got to wonder whether that's going to be a resonant message when it comes to the Republican base.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, I actually do think that it could be. I mean, it's something that one can understand. I mean, Trump or DeSantis very, very blatantly, decided to piggyback on Trump and just sort of fetishize that whole thing to get elected governor. And then he does turn around. I mean, yes, I mean, loyalty in politics, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But this is pretty egregious. But the other piece of this is, someone like Glenn Youngkin or Brian Kemp. I mean, math is not on time, and also math is not on Ron DeSantis' side because, Trump's got his 40% or whatever his ceiling is. And then, like in 2016, you start, dividing it up amongst the Tim Scotts and the Mike Pences and whoever else gets in. And eventually, we have a repeat of that. And everyone's looking to rally behind Donald Trump again. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of work to do.
Well, Jonathan, I mean, also the scandals, the potentially looming criminal indictments have done nothing among the Republican primary voters but make Trump stronger. I mean, you look at the numbers from Quinnipiac, Trump has a 31-point lead over DeSantis, which is bigger than it was in March, which was when the news cycle was better for Trump.
Right.
So
yeah, look, there's no question that Trump has been helped from DeSantis' inability to leverage the midterms for his benefit this calendar year, and been helped, yes, by the indictment in Manhattan. There's a rallying effect, and this, Alex, gets to the heart of the challenge of trying to beat Trump in a primary. If you're a Republican, you cannot attack Trump frontally with traditional attacks because that's going to remind Republicans of the kind of criticism that they hear from Democrats in the media. And so that's the challenge here. That's kind of, can you go after Trump in a way that weakens him in the eyes of GOP primary voters, but doesn't remind those voters of the last 8 years of attacks on him from the left? And boy, that's going to be really challenging, but they're going to have to try it here soon because, as you point out, Trump's lead is significant. And if he sits out these debates and they can't lay a glove on him in those forums, it's going to be that much harder.
Yeah, it's just the connection these voters feel to Trump is so visceral. It is so emotional.
Personal. Yeah,
it is deeply personal. Well, and so will this campaign be. Jonathan Martin, Mark Leibovich, two great gents to start this evening off with. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.